great to be here in person. This room is full. So that's fantastic, because not too long ago we didn't know if we were going to be here. It's been 2 years since we were together in Las Vegas when the world was normal. Remember how great that was? And in Las Vegas, I think the world shut down, a week later. We were talking about that new thing called COVID. Last year we had 1,800 members registered on our Zoom virtual meeting, and it was great, but it wasn't quite as good as being here. One thing I would say, that last week when I was packing and prepping for this meeting, I told my wife Gretchen that there was something wrong with the dryer, and I could not get my pants together. She said it wasn't the dryer, that's dry clean, dummy. I think it's the dryer. I hope you guys have fixed your dryers, so I don't believe her. So today is Valentine's Day, and I would like to mention that. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of times Gretchen said, "I'm the most romantic person in the world." Hundreds of times. And sometimes I feel there's sarcasm in that. So with that, Gretchen and Kim, please accept those flowers. And if I could put the first, there you go. So in all seriousness, hundreds of times this year, there's 365 days in a year, probably half of them, I came straight home, ate dinner that she'd cooked, and I either went back to the office or went to bed. So I couldn't do what we all couldn't do what we do without our spouses. So thank you very much. How about that game last night? That was really, the last month of football was as good as you can get. NFL ought to quit and just drop the mic and say that was as good as we're ever going to be, unless you're from Cincinnati. I will say Washington, if you watch Cooper Kupp, he lives an hour up the road from where we're at. So if we had to have somebody win, that was great to have Cooper win MVP. He caught a touchdown in the last 2 minutes last night to win over the Bengals. There is certainly one good thing about the start of 2022, is the fact that I do not have to watch Tom Brady in a Super Bowl ever again. However, mark my words, he will probably be a TV announcer and call the Super Bowl and ruin that Super Bowl as well. And he'll probably throw a touchdown from the booth. Anyways, as you could tell, there's a little frustration. I'm a Colts fan originally. However, I do want to tell a little story about NACD and the Super Bowl, because we always coincide with the Super Bowl. So this is an absolutely 100% true story. Is that a friend of mine and a mentor who was a Cowlitz tribal elder and was co-chairing our tribal RBG with me at the time, she honored me with a tribal name, which is something special if you don't know what that is. But I got named after a certain awful, terrible, dreadful, appalling Super Bowl play. And I tried to find more synonyms, but I couldn't. We had a huge delegation from Seattle, and we were in New Orleans that year. And if Craig Nelson's in the room, I can't see out, but Craig was with us, and we had a big group. We were in elation. Seahawks were on the 1 yard line, down by 4, so all they needed to do is score a touchdown. And a certain quarterback by the name of Russell Wilson threw the ball, and it was intercepted on the goal line, and game over, and it just crushed our heart. So one thing I would say, there was a certain quarterback that was playing against the Seahawks that night, which I unfortunately already mentioned in his name, Tom Brady. His name is like Voldemort in Harry Potter movies, don't say his name out loud or he'll win another Super Bowl. So Russell Wilson dropped back, threw an interception, crushed our hearts, and the next day I walked up on stage at NAC, and I don't remember why, don't remember what I was supposed to be doing. I got up way more people in this, and I don't even think I was an officer. I probably just walked up on stage, and I said 4 words: just run the ball. And I walked off. So they honored me with a tribal name of Runs the Ball. And true story, and it's an honor to get that name. And I kind of joked and said, could I change that? And they're, no. So I get to remember that play in my tribal meetings forever. So it's only been 7 years and 13 days, but who remembers? So I do want to recognize a few people here. I believe the next slide. Nope, yeah, one more. Yeah. So these folks are very special to me. These are our current officer group. Tim Palmer, Kim LaFleur, and Jeremy Peters and I have served together for 5 years now. Ian Cunningham, 3 years, and Gary Blair has been with us a year. I really want to thank them for their service. We got on calls every Friday morning for an hour and a half, and nobody misses the calls. Sometimes some of us are deer hunting, and I shot a 29.5-inch, I should have put a picture up there. I shot a deer this year during our call. These guys can vouch for it, with an earbud in my ear, and then I got online and said, I got one, I can talk now. So, yep, go back. So we had the pleasure of going on a trip this year together, and it's super nice in November, where we spent 3 days together. And yeah, we were duck hunting, but we don't get the time to talk out issues extensively. So if you put the next picture up, we had lots of time, and Kim, there's some funny pictures that I didn't put in there of real funny pictures. They got into the duck blind through the dog door. They were all crawling through the dog door, and I walked up and I go, "What are you guys doing? The door is right there." So Kim got her first duck. Yep, you can see that middle picture, how happy she is. Next picture, please. Ian got his first duck and goose, I believe. And next picture. Jeremy had a heck of a day. And then next picture, please. What is that, Gary? Okay, so the only rule was don't shoot my decoys. And so this, and I want to be very serious here, this decoy is up for auction. It's up for $200. That's great. So that decoy is a collector's decoy. It is called a Columbia River decoy, and at the time it was the top of the top. Every duck hunt I've been on for 20 years, and I duck hunt for a living. I hunt 100 days a year, so this decoy has saw a lot of action, but it's now going to be owned by Gary. So that's our shameless plug for tonight's auction. But in all seriousness, Gary is a great shot. We're all doing this for fun, but I couldn't. It was a good shot. Look at that, right in the head. But if you turn that around, you can see where Gretchen shot it 2 years before. So next picture, please. Oh, I put that out of order. Here is, Ian already crawled in through the dog door, and Jeremy's starting to come in, and the man door is just to the right, so I thought that was funny. Next picture, please. So I also had the honor of having Adam Putnam here this year, and that was kind of a coincidence. We had a hunt with that's Jay Vroom formerly from Crop Life America. And then on the bottom left, that is former Chief Bruce Knight, former Undersecretary Bruce Knight. So there's not a lot of blinds that I can sit in where I'm the little bitty guy in conservation, but I kind of just sat there for 3 days listening to the master speak. So it was really a great time. But here's another shameless plug. This hunt is going up for auction later tonight. And this is the winery that's 5 minutes from my house. So it's a good trip. Thank you, Adam, for coming and participating in that. And I welcome you here. Okay, next picture, please. So this is a picture of the past presidents. And this is one of the highlights, if not the highlight, of the last year of being president. This was the 75th anniversary of NACD. And what an amazing group. There's hundreds of years of volunteer for NACD there. We held that on the 94th floor of the John Hancock Center, and it was really great. So you can turn the slides off. So the first year has been a really interesting, very time-consuming, and sometimes challenging first year as president. We saw a new administration go in place in DC, and as with all administration changes, there were lots of new faces, but a lot of old friends that went in leadership. We all assumed and hoped that it'd be the end of COVID, but it was not. I would have to acknowledge there's been challenges that have lingered through COVID longer than anyone would have anticipated. Vaccine and mask mandates, as well as office restrictions, have put strains on relationships between the Nrcs and districts. Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and I, just like everybody else, have had my fair share of Zoom meetings. Yes, those meetings are good, and yes, they're better than not meeting at all, but it's not like being here in person. Most importantly, even with all the challenges, the districts are still here. We're still working, and we're still strong, just as we have been for the last 75 years. NACD is representing each one of you, all of our districts and all of our producers that do the work that ultimately puts the conservation practices on the ground. I thank every district and every state association for their dues, because none of what we do here, it would be possible without it. We are continually striving to build better district capacity, adding leadership training, advocating for conservation, and reaching out to those that have been underserved in the past. I would like to acknowledge the hard work that our CEO, Jeremy Peters, and his staff have accomplished this year in putting another good meeting together. Again, we didn't know if this was going to happen, so once we pulled the trigger, there was a lot of work that went into finalizing this. Yes, please. I can tell you, Jeremy and I both received many calls stating that there were too many restrictions. We received many calls stating there's not enough restrictions. People stayed home because there was too many, because there was not enough. So I hope we found a balance where everybody can feel safe and we can keep everybody healthy. But most importantly, I want you to know that we heard those calls and people reaching out to us. I believe we have 46 states and territories present, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Quite honestly, when we took roll, we were counting because we needed 29. We got 46, so that's wonderful. So moving into leadership, and at this meeting, we are concluding the inaugural cohort of the NGLI, so that's the Next Generation Leadership Institute. I can't see out very well. Are the NGLI folks in the room, or are they back? So the first, if the first cohort is here, could you please stand up? How about the second cohort? Is the second cohort meeting, or are they in here? Oh, so, so both of you, please stand. Both. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the future of NACD right here. So go ahead and please be seated. If you know a rising star in your state, please nominate them for this program, because this program is fantastic. Ray Ledgerwood, wherever you're at, you're doing a wonderful job, and we need to bring up leadership through. So please let us know next year if you have somebody to be nominated. A new item for this year is we had a new organizational chart. In October, we implemented a chart that added new capacity. Most notably, we added a Chief Programs Officer, Jen Nelligan, who comes with us from extensive knowledge of NRCS and other government programs, and Chief Operations Officer, which is Carla Maldonado Mitchell, who has been with us for quite a while, and she's stepped up to that role. We have a lot of new staff this year. I want to welcome all to the team. Since we have not had an annual meeting in person in 2 years, many of our new staff members, they simply haven't been to an annual meeting and they don't know what they don't know. So help them, introduce yourself to them, and let's help them along in this meeting and welcome them to NACD. I can tell you the Great Resignation was and is real. If you own a business, if you have volunteers, I can tell you from my ranch, I typically have 7 workers. Last year I had myself and my assistant manager. It was difficult. And we saw that as NACD as well. The last 2 years has challenged every single one of us regarding our jobs, our social life, and interactions with others. And we're not alone at NACD with the changes last year, but change is continual and change is good, and we will always make the positive out of everything. Some of you heard me say this, and I love this quote. My grandpa was a grumpy guy, and he said in 1981 that kids these days don't know how to work. Well, that may be true for his generation, which was the greatest generation. He went through the Great Depression and went through World War II and went country to country fighting. So compared that to kids these days where they like their Twitter and whatever else is on there, it's different. But this difference is reality, and we have to adjust to that at all points of our lives and our families. We are very happy with the team we have assembled right now, and we're excited to work with them into the future. So some of the highlights of my first year certainly was the presidents in Chicago. Tim Palmer, obviously with the help of Gretchen, since it was virtual, I got the President's Award, and it was a great honor because I hadn't the slightest clue in the world. I was reading my script, scrolling down, didn't realize Gretchen was standing right beside me, and I cried in front of 1,800 people, which is not the best, but it was fun. So thank you. The Climate Action Task Force has really been an interesting journey for us this year. We'll talk more about it later, but I had immediate past president Tim Palmer chair that. One of the highlights this year is Congressman Dan Newhouse put a resolution in front of the House that recognized NACD's 75th anniversary, and he did that through the Congressional Western Caucus. And Dan is not only my congressman, but he's a multi-generational farmer in Washington State. So it's nice to have farmers that volunteer to reach out to recognize the work that we do. Other highlights are just what we do all the time, building and strengthening partnerships through USDA organizations like Ducks Unlimited and National Wild Turkey Federation. I'm leaving here and on Thursday and going to Nashville for some policy meetings with the National Wild Turkey Federation. We have the Sand County Federation that we're signing an MOU with. I worked on an EPA Farm, Ranch, and Rural Community Committee as an advisor to the EPA advisor. and I was assigned the water subcommittee and spent nearly a year working on very fun and uncontroversial topics like WOTUS. A year on WOTUS. It was great. So tribal partners, and the list can go on, but those are the highlights of what we work on, and we continue to do that. So starting from our meeting last year, my 3 priorities at that meeting were climate change, food insecurity, and equality and social justice. So I'll just give you a quick update of what we've worked on towards those priorities. The climate change legislation and executive action has been in the forefront of the administration and will be for the foreseeable future. The marketplace for carbon and other ecosystem-based credits is happening right now. If it is public or private or a combination of both is yet to be determined. The Climate Action Task Force, if you could put up that last slide, please. I called that to address this priority. And I had Tim and our former NACD legislative director, Laura Wood Peterson, who is now with LWP Consulting. They worked through that group, and it was an awesome group. Now, this is outside of the norm of NACD, because we had our region reps on here, but we also called experts from non-traditional partners, and I give the credit to Tim to kind of thinking outside the box in the climate realm, and Dr. Karen Waldrop that works for Adam at Ducks Unlimited was one of the advisors, and we had representatives from academia, forestry, EPA, NRCS, county governments, NASCA, tribal leaders, tribal organizations, NCDA, RC&D councils, NGOs, agriculture, and soil health champions. So it was great to have a broad voice bringing us ideas on how NACD could work on this. I do want to acknowledge is Jimmy Emmons in here? I don't know if he's in here. He was he's at this meeting. We have Jimmy Emmons and former acting chief Leonard Jordan. So what I felt like was the very best advice back and forth, and Tim did a wonderful job. We originally started on climate and carbon markets, but very quickly changed due to the Biden administration released a request for public comment on tackling the climate crisis. That task force not only submitted comments on that request, but USDA's request of information on climate-smart agriculture and forestry programs. They also participated in drafting an op-ed published in AgriPulse in July, reinforcing the definition of conservation that has been utilized by conservation districts since Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave that to the states 85 years ago. So we're pretty comfortable with what our definition of conservation is. Though the Climate Action Task Force is in the forefront of climate comments, dealing with bipartisan infrastructure package and much more, all NACD committees, subcommittees, RPGs provided feedback on that work. My second priority last year was food security and insecurity. And through COVID and 2 years of COVID now, we've realized that food security is national security. That means producing the safest, most affordable, most sustainably grown food in the world. It also means ensuring those in need have food to eat. That is one of the many great things about our Farm Bill, is that it supports our producers, supports conservation programs, and supports those in need. The COVID pandemic exposed holes in that supply chain. Food was being produced, but not always getting through the supply chain. So my third priority was equality and social justice. We in the ag community have been painted with a broad brush. Ag has to be proactive in outreach to underserved and underrepresented areas. And we have to help producers of color, tribal members, and other historically served populations get involved in the conservation work that we do. We have to acknowledge that there is a need there, and it is important to have diversity in our ranks, and we'll be a stronger organization for it. Working on that was a DEI task force originally called by Tim Palmer, and it is chaired by, I almost said President-elect, but first Vice President Kim LaFleur. And they've worked hard over the last year, a little over a year, and as the big board heard yesterday, NACD's DEI consultant, Dr. Thomas Easley, he is here helping us, helping the DEI committee on their audit of recommendations they could come back to the big board. So the Tribal Resource Policy Group is something that was special to me. It was founded quite a few years ago under President Earl Garber and officially put forth by President Lee McDaniel. And Larry Davis, if he's in the room, he's now chairing that and doing a wonderful job. And we continue working and building our partnerships with tribal producers, tribal conservation districts, and tribal organizations. And I have been asked to participate as an advisor for the Intertribal Ag Council's Native Farm Bill Coalition, and to basically find and figure out ways do we have similar priorities in the Farm Bill, and we'll do that with many organizations. So Policy Book Task Force was a priority of mine as well. It's an important issue to me, as I was a former chair of the Policy Book Task Force, and we've slowly gotten that thing from hundreds of pages to 119 pages to we're going to get it down. So Larry Davis is actually chairing this Policy Book Task Force, and what they're going to do over the next year is go through the policy book section by section, line by line, determine if there's duplicative policy or if there's policy no longer relevant. This mission of reviewing an entire section of the policy book is imperative because you have to take a holistic approach and compare each policy. And we started that with the CRP section this year and did a trial run to get our protocol set and figure out how to review it. And I want to thank Bill Simshauser and Angela from South Dakota. They created a spreadsheet that NASA would be proud of and started going, these are similar, and checking words, and holy cow, it was great. So our policy book's going to look good after that. We're going to make sure that we don't have duplicative policy and everything's up to date. So you'll see that over the next year. I called last year a Pacific Island Special Committee, and I've asked Roland Katigwa to chair that and had many conversations with Roland, and I got to thank Ariel Rivers, Travis Thomason, May from Hawaii, Michael and Erica from Guam, and many others for this ongoing effort. We are working towards a possible summit in Guam as early as this year that would try to include our member states of American Samoa, Northern Marianas, and Palau. So, you know, other regions of NACD think they have a long way to go to meetings. Okay, think about this. We're 9 time zones, just our region. I don't know how many miles that is, but that's a lot of miles. So Michael from Guam yesterday, I can happily say that he was, where is Michael? There he is. Stand up, Michael. That is your new Pacific Region chair, and he's 11 time zones from where we're at right now. So we wanted to show, he was unanimous. So the Pacific Region wanted to show that we're working on the issues. We want their voice. So very happy to have you, Michael, and it fits right in with what we're trying to do as an organization. And we'll see what time we have to have meetings now, because I don't know how to do that math. So I did call an Aquifer and Groundwater Task Force. Mark Masters from Georgia is chairing that, and they are tasked to explore practices, programs, and policies related to groundwater and source water protection, and they're also tasked with what's working and what's not. And Mark will be delivering 1 year from now a report to NACD on that issue. Something that I started as a joke as Coffee with Crowder. It actually went over pretty well, and I've had 4 people ask me if we were going to do that. Sure, if people want to do that, that really was a joke, but it was an hour on Zoom with myself and Jeremy and leadership with no questions, no agenda, just get on and have, so we'll do that, but I will do the last one. It will be bourbon with Crowder, and I promise you that. Drinks are certainly optional, but they will be encouraged. So a big part of me and a big part of in NACD and what we do is strengthening our partnerships, building partnerships, and Nrcs is our biggest partner. We have NCDA and NASCA and on with partners that we are hand in hand with. But with NACD, they're our strongest partner. Chief Terry Cosby has been in place for a little over a year now, and he was a previous state conservationist in Ohio. He knows and appreciates the great relationship that NACD and NRCS has had for decades. And since becoming chief, Terry has never once not called me back if I've called him or texted him, and in spite of tremendous demands on his time. He is a friend to conservation, and there's continual communication between leadership of USDA, NRCS, and NACD, and we must continue to work together for all of us to be successful in the mission of locally led, voluntary, incentive-based conservation. I know Chief Cosby will be here tomorrow, but when I talked to him last week preparing for this meeting, he sent me NRCS's 5 priorities for 2022, and I thought they're short, so I thought I'd read those. Number 1, ensuring equity in the delivery and implementation of all NRCS programs and services. Well, just off the top of my head, DEI, Tribal RPG, and Urban RPG is working on that. Number 2 was increase assistance for climate-smart agriculture and forestry to support producers in building resiliency across their operations. Climate Action Task Force, Forestry RPG, NRPC, on and on. Number 3, expand conservation tools and support to address the unique needs of urban farmers and communities nationwide. We have a long-serving urban RPG. Number 4, cultivate and complete a diverse workforce that has the right tools, technologies, and training to uphold the scientific integrity of NRCS. You got NGLI, and nearly every committee, RPG, and task force at NACD works on that. And number 5, leverage innovative partnerships to expand NRCS's ability to get conservation on the ground effectively and efficiently. All of the partnerships we are building and strengthening help this. I did talk to Administrator Zach Ducheneau from the Farm Service Agency by text last week and gave him an opportunity to put forth any concept. And I first worked with Zach on tribal issues when he was working for the Intertribal Ag Council, so I know Zach quite well. And he was actually an advisor for the tribal RPG for several years. So Zach wanted to communicate last week, and his main thing is he wanted to emphasize the reserve part of the Conservation Reserve Program on working lands and with working lands, that they're not set-aside lands. So that's his personal message that he is bringing forward to Congress. So at this meeting, we have Ag Futures of America, we have the Sand County Foundation, we have Ducks Unlimited, I'm headed to National Wild Turkey. There's too many partners to mention every one of them, but just know we're continually working and building partners. 30 by 30, America the Beautiful. This issue has garnered more discussion here this week by far than any other topic. So a few thoughts on that. NACD is nonpartisan. We are good partners. There's no administration that we agree with 100%. I think it's important to first acknowledge the concern with 30 by 30, America the Beautiful. The administration laid out broad principles, but few details for achieving their vision. That lack of information has allowed detractors to define the initiative. NACD also stood up as a federal partner to define that mission with our first major op-ed. And we got lots of feedback because we were the first one to stand out there and say, this is what our definition of conservation is, and it hasn't changed for 75 years. So I will take the Secretary at his word that America the Beautiful is not a land grab, but instead focuses on principles that we embrace: locally led, voluntary, incentive-based conservation. But we expect the Secretary to live up to those words. It is important that NACD continues to engage with the administration on this issue, to deliver the message that we need strong and clear, integrate these working lands into the definition of conservation. By doing so, we can also consider an investment into America the Bountiful, by clearly defining conservation beyond the narrow scope of preservation. We'll be able to meet the goals set forth by the administration. If we instead decide to put our heads in the sand and oppose the administration, we will lose our seat at the table, and we don't want to do that. So we need to clearly define what issues we have problems with and what issues we clearly approve, and we are doing that. So moving on to Farm Bill. The Farm Bill process has begun in Washington. The House Agricultural Committee kicked off with 2 hearings earlier this month. We expect this year we'll be evaluating how the current bill is working and getting ready to write the bill in the next Congress. NACD will again play a leading role and expect to be a strong voice in voluntary, locally led, incentive-based conservation. We also will continue our leadership role in education on the conservation delivery system and the importance of it in delivering Farm Bill conservation programs. And with that, we'll be announcing Farm Bill Task Force. Sometime at this meeting, we're not quite at the end but before the meeting is over, we'll be announcing those members. We are almost full now. I can announce some of the people that have accepted are rock star Jimmy Emmons, Theo Garcia. He is a tribal producer from the Kanik tribe in Alaska. Gary Blair has accepted. Michael from Guam has accepted. Bill Simshauser, John McAlpine, Poe Vaughn, Jim Berlier. But we have some others that we're trying to figure out. So we'll do a press release when that is done. So the most important thing for myself and us going forward this year, we got to focus on Farm Bill. So there'll be a lot of attention to that. So in closing, I believe NACD is in a strong place in what has been a challenging time. We are financially strong thanks to the dues payments and grant services. We have more staff to do more services to the districts. We administer more grants to help TA, leadership, and outreach, and we continue to increase our partnerships. We will continue to increase our influence on policy and legislation, and looking forward to discussions on the Farm Bill in the coming year. But we do all this for our supervisors, our partners, but most importantly, it's about our producers. It is about helping our producers put voluntary conservation practices on the ground through the locally led, incentive-based conservation delivery model. This not only helps their bottom line, but helps their farms, their ranches, and their communities, and society as a whole. NACD is here to help you, help your region, help your state, your island, your reservation, or your local community, or your farm, wherever you are. And it's an honor and a privilege to meet so many great people on this journey, and I look forward to working with all of you in the next year and beyond. Thank you all for being here and your support for what you do, and I thank you very much.